All right, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 23rd Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. The time is now 7 o'clock, and we'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fantastic. Next up on our agenda tonight is public input. We have a couple of members in the audience. Any public input this evening? No? All right. I don't see anybody running at the door. We'll close public input. There is a second public input at the end of tonight's meeting. Next up, we have review, additions, changes to tonight's agenda. I have one I'd like to do right after correspondence, if I may, and that is because we have a remote participant tonight. I'd like to review the NHMA key points that were circulated to the committee. And I know we need to vote to allow remote participation, so I'd like to do that before we do any voting tonight. Okay. Next up, we have correspondence. I do have a summary. The summary was circulated to our minute taker, Matthew, so he does have this available for the minutes, but I'll read it off for the record here. We have town budget reports circulated every Friday religiously, so thank you for that. On August 27th, September 3rd, September 10th, as well as September 17th. On August 27th, we have confirmation of Ms. Stevens and Mr. Sun's registration for the NHMA budget workshop. Hopefully you were able to attend and enjoyed that. August 27th, we have the circulation of the bus contract, the first student contract, based upon our last committee meeting that was circulated to the budget committee. Also on August 27th, we have the August 26th minutes that were circulated. August 28th, I know Ms. Stevens submitted a question on fuel savings for the buses and transportation. On September 9th, we circulated the meeting agenda for this evening. On September 9th, we have confirmation on when Budget Committee will receive a draft town budget was expected today, and as you'll see later, was also received today, which is great. Thank you, Town Administrator Brown. On September 16th, we have confirmation of Town Administrator Brown on Budget Committee meeting start times. He was confirming 6:30 or 7 o'clock starts. I know based on the past there was some confusion. We're a 7 o'clock start as the committee has decided throughout the year. Let's see. On September 17th, we have Town Administrator Brown email to department heads, just giving everyone a heads up on being available for the upcoming budget review sessions in case there are any questions. On September 21st, we're going to, Mr. Burnell, our IT manager, circulated remote participation of public bodies and a WebEx link that can be used. That WebEx link was circulated to the committee. So in the event anyone does need to be remote for the meetings, there is a link that will be a standing link for all of our meetings. On September 21st, Mr. Barca, who's not with us tonight, did email and say he has a work conflict and would not be joining. On September 22nd, Mr. Taylor sent an email and potentially running late. Glad to see that you're here timely. And September 23rd, Mr. Hayes did send me an email on remote participation for tonight. And also earlier today, on September 23rd, Town Administrator Brown did circulate the Google Sheets with the draft working town budget to the committee. So we'll have a week in advance to review it before we get into it next week. Awesome. Any other correspondence from any other committee members that I may have missed? All right. Sounds good. So next up on the agenda, as added a moment ago, we are going to review the NHMA points on remote meetings. So just to read them into the minutes, this was circulated, as mentioned, by Town Administrator Brown, so hopefully not new to anybody. But given that the emergency situation, the emergency orders were lifted, there is some guidance that was put out. And I'll just read the 4 points here so everyone understands. A public body may, but is not required to allow one or more members to participate remotely only when such attendance is not reasonably practical. Any reason that such attendance is not practical should be stated in the meeting minutes. That's point one. Point two, there must be a physical quorum of the public body that votes to allow remote participation. So we do have a remote member tonight, so we will need to vote. Any member participating remotely shall identify the person or persons present in the location from which the member is participating. If remote participation is allowed, all voting must be called by roll call vote, which we've been doing anyways. Mm-hmm. So with that, I know we have a remote participant this evening. We do need to vote on whether the committee will allow that. We certainly have a quorum in the room present tonight, so we can make that call. What's not clear to me is do we do this case by case, meeting by meeting, or can we make a blanket vote for the budget season?
You have to do it case by case.
I think you want to play it safe just so that nobody
Case by
calls you
case.
question, because every week it's.
Okay, so this will be a standing agenda item now going forward. I did not, on the agenda for the next 3 weeks that I've circulated, I did not have it on there, but we will add it each night. Okay, so I will entertain a motion or a vote.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Sun,
Second.
second by Mrs. Douglas, and that motion is to allow remote participation to budget committee meetings. Correct?
Yes.
Correct. Discussion?
I think that it has to be to allow the remote participant to be included in the meeting for voting purposes.
I think it's great.
We had to do it with our meeting the other night with Mr. Lascelles.
Yep.
I think it's a good way to maximize participation, not just of a member who may not feel comfortable, but of the public at large. So I think it's a great way to open up the meetings to be more accessible.
Fantastic. And any other discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Ms. Harrison?
Yes.
Leary? Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
I am a yes.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Taylor? And Mr. Hayes shouldn't vote, right? Because he's a remote participant?
Right.
Or I abstain, one or the other.
Yeah, we'll abstain. All right, so that passes 7-0-1. Did I count that right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Mr. Hayes, because you are remote, you do need to indicate if there's anybody with you.
Just me, myself, and I.
Okay, and stating for the minutes the reason for being remote this evening.
The reason for being remote is I have not been vaccinated in COVID-19,
Fantastic.
near future. And with the Delta variant running rampant, I feel a little bit better being remote at this time.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that clarity. All right, anything else on remote participation?
If we know, I sent you an email just a minute ago because I do know of a date in November that I'm going to be out. Is that something do you want us to do? Just best practice if we know in advance there's a date that we will likely be remote?
Yeah, if there's a date that you're going to be out, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Because we would need to know if we're going to be able to have a
Physical quorum, right?
Correct. Yep. All right, excellent. Next up is review and acceptance of minutes. We do have our August 26 minutes, which were prepared and circulated to the committee. Were there any modifications to those minutes as sent?
No, but I was impressed by the quick turnaround.
Right? Yeah, very impressed.
Do we have someone?
But it was
taking-
also like a 25-minute meeting, right?
Right. No, I remember my boss being like 48 hours, get the meetings and minutes out within 48 hours of meeting. I'm like, wow, that was fast. So
Is he watching? Is he going to watch this back and record?
Yeah, so some nights he'll be joining in person when he has availability. Otherwise, just like he does for the Board of Selectmen meeting or the Select Board meeting, he does watch them on replay and does the minutes accordingly.
I had no comments.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So made.
We have a motion by Ms. Douglas,
Second.
second by Mr. Leary. Mr. Sun,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
I abstain.
you abstain. Okay. Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
I am a yes.
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Stevens, and Mr. Hayes. Mr. Hayes?
Uh-oh.
Are you muted?
Okay, we're gonna go with.
Yes, I was muted, sorry, yes.
Okay. No problem.
It's always
This is
the
gonna be
first
fun.
question.
Okay.
Yourself.
That passes 7-0-1. Fantastic. All right. Next up on our agenda is town business, and I will turn it over to Mr. Leary for an update.
We completed the budget. You guys should have received it. Did Troy send it out, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he told me he was going to. And it's a working budget still because we don't have the insurance numbers. And there was a couple of surprises. Fuel cost has gone way up, as has propane from what we understand. So we might need to do some finagling there. with the numbers. Other than that, the transfer station has started chipping brush rather than burning it. There's been a lot of complaints from people about the burning, the smoke, inhaling smoke. So they're going to try chipping it and see how that goes. And what that'll do is they'll bring in a company to chip it, and it'll free up the transfer station people. Instead of having to watch a fire, they can do what they normally do. So that's a new trial that we're doing. Also, we're going to have a presentation from a company about converting all the town lights to LED.
Oh, good.
It's initial cost up front of around $17,000, I believe, but it will save the town about $7,500 a year.
Wow.
And so it's about 2.5 years to pay it back. So we're very intrigued, and we want to see what that's all about. Other than that, everything's budget. Here we go.
Is that street lights, or is that
Yeah, all the street
also
lights.
internal to the buildings?
It'll be all the streetlights.
Street lights.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. It's about $475 per light to retrofit them.
Excellent.
Mr. Leary,
Yep.
can I just put in a little plug for the planning board? A couple years ago, we put in a new sign ordinance, and while we were looking at, we were talking about lighted signs.
Mhm.
While we were researching that, we found that warm lights, 3,000 Kelvin or warmer, actually have a less of an effect on wildlife and even people if they're, you're under the blue light for so long. So just that's something to consider while you're looking at the lights, is having them be a warm white instead of the cold blue LEDs.
Mhm.
I think people in town would appreciate it, because right now they're almost amber, the
Mhm.
street lights.
Yep. So a warm light.
Yep. 3,000 Kelvin or warmer was what the research had.
If you want to just send me that info, and I'll forward it to Troy and the board.
Absolutely. Yep.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for the town? All right. Under RSA 3222, our monthly review of budget expenses, we do receive the weekly expense reports as mentioned. Any questions on the budget reports or expense reports that were circulated? Nope. Okay. Next up, budget review plan for starting next week, September 30th. So exciting times, right? Away we go with our weekly meetings. Everyone's pumped. Everyone's smiling so far. That's good.
Come on, it's one of my favorite times of the year. And I'm actually not joking about it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we do have the plan that we did establish and slightly modified back in June. Everyone hopefully still has that. We will be meeting weekly on Thursdays for the foreseeable future. Next up, next Thursday, the plan is that we begin to review in kind of order that the board has reviewed it, which has also been attached to the meeting agenda for the upcoming meetings. So everyone has that. So for next week, there's a whole host of accounts that we'll review and socialize next week, but starting with town meeting and going through debt services to plan. I know that there is a conflict with conservation on October 7th, where they also have a conflicting meeting that night. So that might get shifted one week or another, but yeah, more to come on that.
Well, we should absolutely shift it if it means they'll come.
Yeah, no, they, Chairman Lepore is very passionate about joining and socializing his budget, which I think is fantastic. He just wants to make sure he has the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay. Any questions for the budget plan and kind of what next week looks like and going forward? No? Not our first rodeo, right? Okay. Next up, Mrs. Harrison,
Oh.
school business.
Let's see. I circulated a number of documents. Sorry for the timing of that. So hopefully you've all had a chance to review. I had the year-to-date expense report, spending reports. We opened school, yay! We have students back in the building full time. We're not offering a remote option this year, and it's been a pretty successful open. We're still looking for staff. We're still short on support staff, paraprofessionals, coaches, custodians. What's that? Custodians. We have a few temp nurse openings, substitutes, social workers. It's just it's a problem everywhere. Schools are looking for good people to come and work for them, and it's really hard to fill these positions, not just for our district but for every district. So if you know of anybody who is looking for work, please point them in our direction.
Is it a salary thing or?
No, it's just a teacher shortage.
It's nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. This
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Some of it is salary related.
Teacher, may I speak?
Yeah, please.
Teacher shortage, so that's not really a salary thing. The
Mhm.
support staff pay scale, I think, has proven to be a challenge
Yeah.
in trying to get people in. When you have Dunkin' Donuts starting at $14 to $16, why do you want to come clean a school for 13? So those types of challenges we're definitely facing. Every part of it, even our transportation provider can't get drivers consistently. It subs out on our routes. So that's been one obstacle to the start of the year is the transportation. I'm hoping we've got it in a good spot now, but
Yeah.
it was a rough couple weeks to start.
But even that's, my dad's a bus trainer in another state and similar situation for his company. They're the
Mhm.
only ones staffed in their entire region.
Yeah. It's
So
incredible.
it's a big thing nationwide.
I mean,
You've seen what Massachusetts did. So
Yeah, with the
they've
National
got
Guard.
their assistant manager and their safety director are out driving the routes, so then they're not getting their work done in their
Mhm.
office.
Right.
So everybody's facing
Yeah,
this.
everybody's just trying to pull together the best they can. I also circulated the first Friday enrollments. We had the first day head counts, and the first Friday enrollments are pretty much in line. We had a little bit of movement between the first day head counts and the first Friday. The October 1st head counts and enrollment is the official report that we get to the state. So we don't expect any huge changes between the first Friday and October 1st. And then I also sent out the year-to-date reports from Corey. And phase 1 of the LMS construction energy efficiency project is complete.
Phase 1 of phase 1.
Phase 1A.
So the roofing will be
Right.
starting up within probably the next couple of weeks
LMS?
At LMS.
at LMS
Yeah.
because that was just materials. Wait for it. It's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to do. They said it doesn't really, if it snows, they'll shovel it off and they'll keep going. So
Mhm. And it won't
really
impact the
exciting,
students
yeah.
at all. They can do it while school's in session.
and design phase for official phase 2, which is next summer, has officially kicked off.
Which is?
The full, it's retrofitting all the lighting fixtures in the building as well as brand new HVAC system for ventilation and appropriate climate
In the kitchen,
in the kitchen.
expanding the kitchen to have more usable space.
and the funding for all that is coming from where?
Right now, it's mostly from ESSER, but there will be probably a warrant article
We're
for
looking at a
any
warrant
additional
article for
need.
NLP to finish the HVAC
Yeah.
work, but a majority of phase 1 has been funded through ESSER funding. We
Mm-hmm.
did carry some fund balance from last year to.
Oh, I'm very much aware of that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that'll be
So-
discussion.
And we,
And,
I did,
that's just for the minutes. That's Business Administrator Isabicki providing an update to the committee.
thank you. I did circulate the project spending spreadsheet, and page 3 of that was the outline of ESSER funds that we expect to receive and when and where they will be allocated in the process.
Yeah, I think my only concern with that, and it's been a while since the Capital Improvement Planning Committee has met, right? We're trying to get that scheduled.
Yeah,
But I do know the kitchen expansion was part of the CIPC plan, right? So I don't know how that gets pulled in or shifted in that master town document.
was that slated for a later date?
I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah,
I don't
I
recall.
don't
off the top
recall.
of my
The
head.
date that was slated for,
Mhm.
it's now, so the energy efficiency project is now, we've looped in the kitchen as part of the overall deal to get it all done. We've already got the construction manager there. So you conclude one project and then go back out to bid for the kitchen as a separate entity. Then you've got all the general conditions of the contract and everything else
Remobilization.
drives the price back up. So while they're in-house, we brought in a kitchen designer as a consultant to, do we need to fully renovate this thing? Is it a layout thing, equipment, getting it all situated better? Based on some studies that our architect has done for the new elementary school project that we're working on, he reviewed LMS. He said the kitchen is of appropriate size. It's more of a layout issue. So we're probably going to go that route rather than a full scale renovation.
Or whatever you can do to move more kids, because I know my son refused to get lunch because he didn't want to wait in line that long. So,
Yeah.
so I'm sure you'd improve
the goal.
sales if you could make sure kids have more than 5 minutes to eat by the time they get lunch.
Sales are important.
Yeah.
With just the way that food service has gone the past couple of years, the way enrollment has gone, like just boost sales.
Yeah, thanks for the update. Didn't mean to derail it too much, but yeah,
No,
no,
that's okay.
I know that is in the capital plan, so
Yeah.
that is worth a revisit.
It's
Yeah.
2022 is what it was slated.
2022, and what was the dollar amount? Was it 200,000?
300,000.
How much?
300.
300,000. Okay. Thank you.
Which, based on what we're looking at, I'm thinking it's going to come in under that. If it's not a full scale renovation, I don't think it's going to be.
Sorry, back to you.
Oh, I think that's all I had, unless anybody has any questions.
Questions for the school? No?
I do have a meeting with Sean Prendable from First Student regarding the question about fuel savings to see what that will look like. It's going to happen either on Monday or Tuesday next week.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Hayes, just giving you an opportunity to ask the school any questions you might have.
I'm all set at this time.
Fantastic. All right, thank you. Moving into the expenses and reports that have been sent to the committee. Any questions on school expenses to date? I know you're just starting the school year, so. Hearing none. All right. Next up, there was a discussion at our last committee meeting, and we tabled it because Mrs. Harrison was not able to attend to this meeting. But there was some discussion in August, I'll say, about memorandum of agreement, understanding, and handshake agreements. We did move it to tonight as a standing agenda item. Mrs. Harrison.
Sure. I emailed Andrew and JD in, I believe it was August. We met as a school board and talking about the budgeting process and the question that Mrs. Douglas had raised about us using funds that were slated for special education transportation were encumbered for things that we spent on the end of the year. That kind of called into question among the school board members what that handshake agreement was, when it was started, and whether or not it's an open and transparent part of the process. And so in our discussion, we kind of decided that if it is something that the budget committee and the school board want to agree on, it should be something that we revisit each year and write it down so that it's part of the process and open and transparent to the voters. So kind of the feeling was nobody on that's the school board, the current school board, the superintendent, the BA, no one was in these positions when that handshake agreement was made. And we questioned whether anybody on the current budget committee was part of that process and whether that agreement is still valid. Is it necessary? And if it's something that we want to continue with as part of our process. I think it's kind of, when I was running for school board, I started paying attention and attending the budget meetings. And, and when I was elected, I found out, when the voters approve a budget, the school district doesn't necessarily, that's not the whole story. When I vote in favor of a budget, there are restrictions placed on it between the budget committee and the school board that were party to these handshake agreements years ago. And my feeling and the feeling I think of the board is that that should be part of the process if we discuss it and if we agree to it. So that's why I just thought if that was something that the budget committee wanted to consider, I just wanted to bring that out and put it on the table.
No, thank you. I think it's a worthwhile conversation.
I struggle to understand why the concern is that it's not transparent, because I feel it's the ultimate transparency, because it's special ed in particular is a budget that is incredibly difficult to get very precise. We can figure out number of crayons and pencils and reams of paper, but we don't know specifically the needs of special needs children. That's the discussion that's here every year. And so the agreement was that we would budget conservatively with the understanding that the funds that were overfunded because we weren't sure and wanted to give you a buffer, then get returned to the school budget. I've been in town
Who made that agreement?
13 years and it predates me by a long time.
Right. Well, that's
So-
my issue with it. Is
But
that
I don't understand why it's an issue because that's the way we've operated for decades.
Well, I think the principle of the issue itself, I don't think is this part of the discussion. Like, I've been in town for less than 4 years, and that was the first I had heard of it was when it came up in that process. So I think, 4 years from now, if none of us are sitting here, what is that next budget committee going to do when those conversations come up? And I think that's the importance of making sure that whether we're talking special ed or any other handshake agreements that we have, that something is written down and agreed upon, that no matter who's sitting in these seats, they understand what those are and they have the opportunity to revisit them if they so choose.
So does that make sense to include it in our bylaws, right, as a potential addendum?
Just what I guess I don't understand how you would make that look, because then we would have to actually sit here and say, I'm sorry, but you're projected to have 3 students next year at however much. That's all you get the budget for.
no, what
Because I'm not going to be comfortable here saying I'm okay with you budgeting for 4 because I know that if you only use 3, the taxpayer's getting their money back.
But
Because now if the money can be then funneled into the general fund, then it becomes a slush fund.
so in the past 6 years, and this is just as long as I've been kind of paying attention and part of the process,
Thank you.
we've had 2 new superintendents. We have a new BA, and I know that we've had the conversations about how we now budget for special ed based on current enrollment and current projected need. And we don't fund in any buffer anymore. We fund based on the students that we have identified and the needs that we project that they're going to have the following year. So I don't know when that changed. I don't know, we don't pad that budget. It's a very precise budget, just like every other section of our budget. So I don't think there is a need to say, if you end up with extra, every penny goes back to the taxpayers.
I don't think calling it a slush fund
Well,
is fair either.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll stand by that, because the problem is transportation is funded by, I have 5 kids, I therefore need 5 transportations. The reality is you could probably, once everything's said and done, consolidate several of those runs. So you get savings there. But we allow it because we don't know if those consolidations are actually going to be achieved. So then what happens is, instead of saying, hey, I have 5 students, I'm going to need 5 bus runs. Now I'm going to say, well, traditionally you have 5 students, you're going to budget 5 for bus runs, but you're going to be able to consolidate 2 or 3 of those.
So I think it sounds like it just comes down to a matter of just trust of the school district to do what we say we're going to do and to try to save money where we can.
I feel like the system has worked for the past 2 decades, and I struggle to understand why we need to change.
I think one of the things that we need to be cautious of, right, is, all right, we put some type of agreement in place, right, or we don't. That lends itself to the budget committee really taking a much harder look than we have in years past at budget lines like special education, right, where historically we haven't made a ton of reductions under the spirit of
It gets returned.
it gets returned to the taxpayer in the event it is overfunded.
Mhm.
So
But that's true of any of our district money in any department.
And the other thing is lack of
well,
trust.
no, because you encumber it, right? If it's not spent,
We
you
can, but we haven't. I mean,
Right. And that's because every year we do have a discussion. We're not going to really nickel and dime you on this budget because it gets returned. And then all of a sudden, after this conversation, oh no, we encumbered it. It's a bottom line budget. So sure, we can put it in writing, but if we've already violated the spirit of the agreement, what good's the paper the agreement's written on anyway?
What about Mr. Taylor, Stevens?
In my experience, everybody does better when they know their expectations ahead of time in any kind of setting. So I don't have an issue with writing anything down. And we're all working towards the same thing here, it sounds like. So I'm not really sure what the harm is in writing it down. Is it like a blurb at the bottom of the budget each year? And then if it's a brand new budget committee, brand new school board, they can vote to take that blurb out if they want. But I don't have a problem writing it down.
I'm actually against handshake agreements. It's your budget. you spend it how you wish. Then at that point, you know what? It's up to us to make sure that we're the eyes to crunch the numbers and make sure that we feel that it's fair to the taxpayer. I wouldn't expect the school to put any restrictions on our ability to be able to garner information or suggest any cuts. Therefore, I would not be in favor of having any handshake agreement that holds the school board from not being able to spend a bottom line budget.
Well, then I think if that's the way we go, then we should not be hearing the drama that we hear every time we ask questions about the special need education budget, because we hear them and then but we don't know, and we're like, okay, we'll let you have. We're not going to cut you too tough because you don't know, but it's going to get returned anyway. So my biggest problem, honestly, and what really upset me the most is we've had this conversation. We had it during budget committee season last year, and then those funds went and got encumbered anyway. So I'm sorry, but any agreement you put forward regarding it, special education transportation got encumbered for the LMS renovations, correct or no?
No.
It was in the
Oh,
list
it
that
was
you
in the
said.
transfers. And when we have a shortage in special education, we take money from the general fund to fund those needs.
The agreement was discussed during budget committee season. And so to have then say
I
this,
don't believe it was.
okay. I'm pretty sure I make a big,
And that's why I
I'm
want.
pretty sure I make a big issue of it every time Devin comes forward with her budget. And the discussion is always, you're right, we overfund this because we know it's going to, excess goes back to the
Well,
budget.
I don't think we need to solve
No, so
anything tonight.
So
right? I think it
again,
was
my
just a matter of
issue
opening
is,
the
I
discussion.
feel we had the discussion and the discussion was violated already. So I don't put it on paper if it makes you feel good, but I'm not going to trust it anyway.
All right. Other committee member thoughts? Mr. Hayes? You might be on mute.
My thought is always, if there's extra money, give it back to the taxpayers. It's their money anyways. That's my thought. And I know that everybody needs to encumber some. The town does it too. But my first thought is always give it back to the taxpayers.
Yes, I was on mute. If the money is not spent and not encumbered, it should go back to the taxpayer.
No, I mean, we are required by law to
Yeah,
return
I-
anything that isn't
So-
encumbered. So it's not like we're lining our pockets.
I don't think, there's any debate on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of actually moving forward with writing things down, right, and putting the special
If it makes you feel
education-
good, go for it.
Well,
I just
it's not
abstain because
making me feel good. It's the will of the committee, right?
I-
And I'm trying to get a sense of what's the direction of the committee on putting something like that forward.
But my expectation though is if we do this, that I am going to be looking, and I hope that everybody else takes the opportunity to look very deeply in budgets
Well,
that we previously,
I'd like to believe we already do that.
previously,
do.
I understand that, but we have previously a little more generous in some budget lines with the expectation money was being returned. If that is no longer the case and no longer the agreement, then those budgets now need to face the same scrutiny other areas of the budget also face.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, right? And I think that's really speaking to Mr. Taylor's point, right? Okay. So we don't need to solve anything tonight. That's the good news. It's just starting the conversation. How does the committee want to move this forward? Give it some thought, table it for a couple weeks.
Mr. Hayes started to
Oh,
say something.
Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry.
Oh, he's muted again.
You must have auto mute.
We'll put it forth as another topic in a couple weeks' time.
The other thought I had was if something comes up, like we really don't know about this particular student in special ed and what those needs are going to be. If it comes up in the budget process, which is how I believe, I reached out to Cindy Kuchar and she was on the school board at the time of this agreement. And she said she believes that's what happened. There was a question about the needs for one or two students. So they said, okay, we'll agree to keep it in the budget. But if you don't use it, you'll return it. And so in that case, I think an MOA, write it down, sign it, and that's good for that year. That's the agreement. So I think
case by case basis
on
as
a
it
case.
comes up in a budget.
budget.
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking. I don't think it needs to be a hard and fast rule that we do every year because budget committees will change, school boards will change.
Well, and that's what I was
you know?
suggesting. Maybe it makes sense to put some type of paragraph or something
Mhm.
within the bylaws that are reviewed every year, and it's at least a discussion point at that point on what to do. You know what I mean? As opposed to a separate document and a separate agreement that can get kind of lost in the shuffle.
It's almost like I don't even know that I'd call it an agreement. It's almost just like a guiding principle for best practices with the
Mhm.
school budget that, this is one of the guiding principles that you have as a budget committee when reviewing a school budget.
I guess my comment on this would be 2 points. One, the transportation for potentially one special ed student in a $22 million budget.
Mhm.
Really? That's what we need to sweat about? I mean,
The transportation
you
for that
then
one
you,
student could be $100,000 depending
It
upon where
adds
they're
up.
going in their needs.
Well, depending on where they go and
Yeah.
what the rate is, the only thing we have guaranteed in the transportation contract is that first student gives us 2 special ed routes within town. Out of district is always a struggle. Reaching out to Durham Transportation, Goffstown Truck, trying to get them. And we ran into a situation with getting students over to CTE because first student couldn't do the run and their rate would have been like a shuttle rate.
Right.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember what the shuttle rate is for the day. Where if you went through the other vendor, it was going to be like $200 a day. Like, no, we can't.
but I mean, I guess my point is then you start taking a look at other areas. So like, for example, you bring up CTE.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to bring it up again this year that, CTE transportation for 3 students going over to Pinkerton. It's like, real. I mean, at that point, you have to start making decisions about do we do it for 3 or we do it for 1? Which one do we absolutely positively have to do? My point is there's moving parts that you can plus and minus in different areas. And ultimately, if it is that you come in and you say, look, you know what? I am 80% sure that we are going to get another student, and here's why.
Mhm.
It makes sense for us to consider putting that extra money in the budget. If it's, and it's all going to be about trust from the school board that, you know what, look, I think that there is going to be an extra one, and here are the reasons why. And then that trust is built within this committee. And then at that point, we go ahead and say yes to it. I mean, so there's that point of it. And
There's twofold with vocational in regards to vocational transportation. So we're fortunate that we have the places close that we can send kids to. You could have a kid come in and identify that, they don't offer what I want at Pinkerton or Malvern, but they do in Laconia. And then we're on the hook to send them to Laconia.
wow,
Like legally we have to transport them, whether it be 1 or 10.
and we can get into this at
Yeah.
when we get to that particular line item, but ultimately then at that point, you send that kid to Laconia, or let's say you send that kid to Berlin because that's the place that they need to go to, then they're not going to be able to meet the rest of the requirements to be able to graduate from Cable High School because they're going to be on a bus all day.
Well, let's bring it back to the discussion, right? So I think, what I'm hearing is, we're kind of mixed on our feelings of this is my read. Let's think about it. Let's add it to a future meeting when we have a little bit more time to dive into it. And we're not spent from budget reviews. Does that sound fair?
Well, I think it's good to try to bring it up before we get to the topic, so I applaud you for that. But like I said, I'm perhaps a little jaded by the fact that I was a little irritated that I feel we had this conversation and it got swept aside already anyway. So perhaps, sure, I'm a little biased in my opinion, but I do think it's appropriate to have a discussion before we actually get deep into the budget.
Okay. All right. That's a consensus. I see yeses. All right. Perfect. We'll close that order of business tonight and move into member input, new business. We do have a facilities improvement update just to share for the CIPC. As mentioned earlier, we haven't met. We do need to get a meeting on the schedule. On the school side?
Keep pushing on that.
Yeah. So from the school side, and I'll start and let Tina or Corey chime in as well. We met yesterday as a committee. It was really the first opportunity for the full group to sit down and meet the architect, Kyle Barker. And he had an opportunity to introduce himself, introduce his team, his background. The rest of the time was really spent him sharing a lot of the work that he's been doing from a needs assessment standpoint and looking at GMS. A lot of conversations around the water issues there at GMS and what his belief and research and work has done to show what's contributing to a lot of that. A lot of pictures, a lot of conversations around cost of renovations versus cost of new. And there was a very healthy discussion on, and just my own belief as well, whatever is put forward for that ballot in 2023, doing the due diligence of what a reno costs versus a new build and being able to share that and present that, the full reno cost, not just the facilities, but there's a lot of groundwork and drainage and everything's going to have to be done as a part of that too. I think is just the responsible way to do it. And
I
so
thought we already had that information.
We
we
have a piece of it.
Yeah.
He's done his own kind of needs assessment as part of the process for applying for building aid. So in his findings, he's seeing things that Turner interpreted differently. So he's looking at the big picture, not just the building itself, but where the water's coming from, how it's getting to the building. Why is it so moist in this area, but not in this area? I'm looking at he's really diving deep into, if we can do this, and this, how much does that cost us? But does it make a renovation possible? Where in the past, we've been told that you just can't do it. The thing is that we were told that 20 years ago, and technology has changed. And there are things that are possible now that weren't possible. back
Yeah,
then.
that's right. I just want to make sure we're using the granted money wisely, and we're
Yeah.
not continuing to pay for these studies that
No, this is all part of
generally
the
tell us the
pre-bond.
same thing.
So last year we paid for what I would call the study of studies, where the New Hampshire School
Yeah.
Administrators
It was 6
Association
figures, right?
compiled it.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, that
so
was this
we're
year.
done doing all these different
Yeah, this is
studies. Like,
Okay.
we've studied that property to no end over 20 years, and it's like, all right, we got to move forward. Kyle's great. He's got 30 years experience in the state of New Hampshire designing school buildings. He's brought in a team from Ashley McGraw, which is in Syracuse, New York. They're the design architect. Kyle's the lead architect. And he also brought in Basin Studio, which does a lot of the programmatic design as well as community outreach. So it's an incredible team. Looking forward to what he comes up with in terms of what is the best option for Litchfield.
And this is that would be a 2/3 vote
Mhm.
for a building.
for
Yeah.
a bond. Yeah.
Yeah, for a bond, yeah.
Are there any other land options for the
Other sites.
new elementary school? Yes.
Yeah, we
So
were.
LMS and GMS are technically on the same piece of property. So we would bring a new building up the hill and situate it on the same area as LMS. And then, of course, we'd have to do the site work for entry and egress and everything. So that's one option. You
Is
get,
there any other property in town that has less of a water issue?
well, if we go up the hill,
There's no water
we
issue.
don't
up there.
have as much of a
Yeah, the
water
water's
As
kind of
much
harder.
or
There's wetlands up there, so we'd have to contend with that a little bit, and they'd have to do a full site survey. But a lot of that work has already been done as
Yeah.
well, because there was a design for a K-8 building that was going to be on that site. So we have a lot of that in our records.
has LMS ever had any water issues over the last 5-10 years? No.
Mhm. Is it that that site is in the 500-year floodplain? Is that right?
What's that?
Is that site in the 500-year floodplain?
GMS.
What caused the
GMS
washout?
is in the.
though?
What's that?
What caused the washout of the
Which
drainage
washout?
pipe? That was it 2 years ago.
That was a failed culvert.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that doesn't relate to groundwater so much as. Okay.
I think probably the biggest takeaway and probably one of the most important things for this group and for the public is that the work that's being done this year is part of the money that was passed as a part of that warrant article last year was investigating the cost of a new building. But I think what Kyle and his team have brought to the table, as well as the school facilities committee, is in order to do that due diligence and put forward a cost and a plan for a new building, you have to understand what it would cost to renovate what we have and what's the best option for taxpayers and for the community. And if we're able to do a reno in a safe, cost-effective way, perhaps that is a better option. So I think having those discussions and reviewing all of those options and costs, I think, is the smart way to do that.
Will there
As-
be sorry, go ahead.
As one of the people who is very much against a new building, I appreciate the due diligence. I do think it's good to know what a renovation, because I feel like
Right.
every time that's been mentioned, it's been, we can't do that. So to have actually a
Comparison, right?
pre-construction manager come in with a facility solution, because having been on the other side of the table, that's what our job. What are all the options? And I feel like we've always gone to one answer.
Well,
So I appreciate that he's willing to look at a more diverse options,
right.
because from people like me who are like, no, I want the full study. At least we're starting there. I
And
appreciate that.
an important thing with the reno is not just the building itself; it's that drainage work for
Right.
that whole land. So to be able to go to the taxpayers and say, look, here's the cost of a reno,
Mhm.
here's the cost of a new building, and it's whatever,
Right.
arbitrarily making a number up 30-40% more. Here are your options, right? We
Right.
can stay here, or we can build new up on the hill, and at least we have our options and we understand all the costs involved. Mr. Taylor.
Will there also be a listing in terms of what kind of funding? It's been clear by Dr. Jetty that renovation, as far as state or federal funding, is not going to happen. That no one was going to invest any public money,
So
government money into a renovation.
Right.
Will we be able to see, cost of a renovation,
Mhm.
but cost of a new building, but cost of the new building, 50%
Local dollar.
of it is going to be funded?
there are, you know, some rumors out there about some federal infrastructure money that's going to be funneled down the schools. We don't know exactly where that's going to land yet. It's
For
just
new or renos?
I think for new.
Okay.
However, in terms of the state building aid, based on needs assessments, the way they do it now, they rank 5 projects, and if it's, you got to rank based on health safety, and based on Kyle's and the way he's looking at it, and the way that we were at a conference yesterday and we spoke with Amy Clark, who's with the state DOE, does building aid. He does, with some of the schools that are out there that are going to be hitting ballots over the next couple of years, we're not going to be ranking very high for GMS. So state aid is probably not going to, that doesn't mean we're not going to apply for it.
Right.
We're going to try for it. We're going to do everything we possibly can to try and secure it. But in listing those projects that might come in ahead of us, yeah, we're not in, it's in the 500 year floodplain.
And that's because of the health safety component of that criteria, right?
So, well, actually, too, she said, being in the floodplain, yeah, there's a safety issue, but the other piece of it is how much do you have to get DES involved in your project, and that keys that part of the project into it. So, there's a lot of legwork to do. We're still going to continue with the letter of intent for this next January and provide a full application to them next July, but there's no guarantee on that money, and they don't tell you what percentage you're going to be eligible for. So unless the state legislature decides to start fully funding the building aid program again, we're probably not going to hit that mark.
Well, that's pretty scary.
Well,
Well,
I-
hopefully, that's why I'm hoping, and I mentioned it ahead of
Okay.
time, Dick Henry, who's one of our consultants, was the one that brought up the federal infrastructure money. So we're going to be looking into that and grants and how can we lessen the impact of the cost of the school.
You mentioned community outreach,
Yes.
right? That's obviously a very key aspect of this. What's involved with that part of their program?
They're going to be doing a full-scale marketing, public community forums, meeting with
Yeah.
parents, students, teachers, every piece of the school that has to be planned, be it the facility itself, community use, what do people want to see in that building, meeting with students, what does the school look like to you, like bringing them and engaging them in it. The
And
teachers
they've already
programmatically, how do you see the program of the school functioning? How do you want the classroom set up? Those types of things.
The
So
team-
it's very extensive.
I was very impressed by the team from Basin. Is their whole thing is they build educational spaces, and they bring in the natural amenities of the site. They've already started pulling together surveys and planning these community forums where people can come and share their ideas. What do they want? What do they don't want? Have you thought about this? And so they're really big on listening to the community and listening to all the stakeholders and figuring out what kind of design is best for Litchfield.
That's going to be a big part of it. That's
Mhm.
something I've been very vocal about, is that whatever plan we put forward has to be communicated well to not just parents, students, and teachers, but to people that don't have kids within the school system. What's the benefit for me, perhaps as someone that lives in one of our 55 plus communities?
Mhm.
What's the benefit to me for a new school or renovation? And actually, it's one of the activities they took us through yesterday, is talking about community involvement within whatever this new site looks like, right? So how does your youth sports get involved in that site? How do your clubs and activities, how do they see this as a space that they can use and benefit from, regardless of whether they have students that are attending this elementary school?
So I like the community input. My concern is, are we going to at least still get some sort of like baseline school? Like a baseline school. Like if I take a look at Campbell High School,
Mhm.
that comes across as, you know what, it's no Taj Mahal.
Mhm.
It functions. It does just fine. I mean, yeah, there's some space issues, but I think that also has to do with the fact that, you've got the SAU using up some of the space as well versus, other places would have an SAU office. But when I look at it, it's not, and my concern is we get all this community input and then all of a sudden, I want this and somebody else wants a little more, a little more, a little more. And we get
No,
this scope creep that all of a sudden turns into this
I
monstrosity.
definitely see that concern. And one thing that we've stressed from the beginning, from when we started interviewing architects, was Litchfield does not want the Taj Mahal. We don't want the shiny new, looks like a spaceship or a space station up on top of the hill. We're a very modest, conservative community, and the school needs to reflect that. And so there are ways within the building to optimize the space for educational programming and what works and what's how our teachers should be teaching, and optimizing the space for that without having it be a space station on top of the hill.
It was actually a really good point that Mr. Mitchell brought up yesterday, because he talked about bringing in the community, the farming community, the houses that are around that space now. How is that a part of whatever this new building looks
Mhm.
like? You don't want 18th century houses surrounding a spaceship looking school. That's aesthetically not something that's very pleasing to new people moving in or whatever. So how do you take all of that into consideration as well?
How are they factoring? Sorry, how are they factoring in the next 10 years, the next 15 years?
Enrollment numbers.
With enrollment
Yeah, Kyle?
and potential growth of the town. I mean, we don't
Right.
know, but how is that being part of the plan?
Yep, that's part of the pre-bond work that the architect is doing as well. He's taken the projections from the state and our local projections, and what he found was across the state, enrollment is decreasing because birth rates are decreasing. However, in Litchfield, we have the unique situation where people are building new houses and moving to town, and our young population is increasing. So that has stayed static or increased, which is why we are overcrowded at GMS, part of the reason. So he's crunching the numbers and doing the square footage per student and all of that work. And the plan is to be able to absorb new enrollments within the space of the building and not having to add on later.
That's it. I mean, we don't want to 5 years from now, we need an addition. We need another portal.
Exactly.
Right.
And so that's all factored in.
Trust me, we don't want that either.
Yeah, exactly.
To go through all this work, and just
Mhm.
everything that's been going on the past couple of years between the design of what's going on at LMS and
Yeah.
working
Well,
on this. It's
I'm balancing with Mr. Taylor, right? Yeah, I'm all for modest, and I'm all for what's the vanilla option, but we just need to make sure that vanilla option
Mhm.
allows for growth.
And that was my point around CHS.
Yeah.
Is, you know what, if
Yeah.
you take a look at CHS, its inception,
Mhm.
sure, there's been, there were challenges last year based on not having enough space, but we also then at that point weren't expecting that you were going to have to space out students the way that you needed
Right.
to. So, I
Right.
mean, again, if you take a look at, if that was just a school,
Mhm.
it has performed very well. It's expanded and contracted,
Mhm.
and there hasn't been a need for portables,
Right.
add-ons,
Right,
things of
and
that
that's, I
nature.
mean, that's of course our goal, is that it's going to be a school that suits our needs for the next 100 years. And that-
Stevens.
Oh, I was just gonna say especially that it's along Charles Bancroft.
Mhm.
The master plan and everything, especially, is very protective about the aesthetics of Charles Bancroft Highway.
yeah.
So it shouldn't stick out, and I'm glad that you're taking that into
Mhm.
consideration, because basically along that road, it's, unless it can kind of, if something's being built, trying to have it work in with that New England feel, small town New
Mhm.
England feel,
Mhm.
or put it behind a bunch of trees.
Yeah.
That's basically, there's no in between.
Put the
Right.
barn in front of it.
It kind of sticks out now, so
Yeah.
I kind of feel like
Just that-
anything would be
keep
in the
that
front.
Sprawling ranch.
Yeah, exactly.
Sprawling
Oh.
ranch.
So it's exciting, the work that's being done, and I continue to be impressed by just how thoughtful and all encompassing the work, the pre-bond work that they're doing is.
All right. Any other questions on facilities? Mr. Hayes, giving you an opportunity. Hearing none?
I actually have a question.
Sure.
So as a follow-up to one that I've had in the past, that it sounds like a lot of concerns are relative to growth in town. Has the school board talked to the planning board about the impact fees and making sure they're actually reflective of the impact that new students have on the building? Because last I
There's
knew,
been a big discussion about impact fees, right?
Yeah.
Came up with the
But
Board of
it's-
Selectmen, didn't
Yeah.
it?
has
it did.
it been,
The LMS impact fees, right?
well, originally they were all
Some,
rolled
but
into
we were gonna-
one, but do they, because last I heard, nobody's actually taken a look to see that they actually reflect the impact. It's just a number we've had forever. Has somebody audited them to make sure that when we assess an impact fee, it accurately reflects the impact that those houses have on the schools? Now, you're responsible for the schools, but they'd be responsible for the towns. Because if you have 20 houses, at some point you need a new teacher. How does that reflect it? If $1,000 for a school is not going to cover the impact that a new house has on a building. So have those impact fees, have you worked with the planning board to make sure that whatever fees are assessed actually reflect the expected impact of those houses? Because that would be an awesome way to offset some of these new, if we need an addition, if we do something else. If you have that money available, because we know there's a $5,000 impact for a new house or whatever it is.
It's a little more than that.
The planning
Well,
board
I know it is, but
the planning board is taking note.
but I feel like this is
A
now
lot more
the
than that.
6th month I've requested this. And I'm just like, I feel like it's a hamster in a wheel. Like, can we please?
If I remember right, most of it actually went to Campbell too.
They
which-
phased out GMS a long time ago, and
Right.
which is,
Yeah, GMS only has like.
but then it got rolled in.
20,000. I think we had sent out kind of a request for a conversation with the Board of Selectmen, where I think the Board of Selectmen has authorized us to use the funds for LMS for this
Mhm.
project.
Because I can
So-
guarantee when you
Yes.
come up,
Yeah.
yep, when
The
you come
windows, yeah.
forward with your
Oh, the
bond,
HVAC.
it is going to be a request of somebody of how have the impact fees been considered in the use, and are they actually accurate?
And I think those calculations are done by an outside entity, if I'm correct. I think it's National Planning
Yeah.
that does those. So I think we'd have to have a conversation between Troy, myself, the Board of Selectmen, because the town is the agents for the
I don't care.
impact fees.
As a budget committee member, I don't care whose job it is. I want the conversation.
Yeah. It's a fair point, and I think we'll take note, and the select board, the planning board, the school, all present and all aware.
Because I can guarantee you, it will come up when we start looking for a 2/3 vote.
Well, let me assure you, we will enjoy any impact fees that can be collected to offset the cost of all of our capital.
Yep, it's a fair point, right? And I think it's
Yeah.
something that we just need to keep in front of our minds. All right. Anything else for facilities? Hearing none, seeing none. Okay, next up, budget meeting calendar review, which we've already discussed. Is there anything else to add on the schedule for the next few weeks?
That only covered through the town, right? It didn't include like there was a Tuesday meeting at some point for the school.
That's
right?
the school. No, this, the agenda that I set was
So it's for the town.
for the town and just for the budget review sessions, not for the town voting.
Okay.
For the
You
next 2
guys don't have
weeks.
any contracts or anything coming up, right? Union contracts?
No. No, the police is the only one in there in year 2.
Mr. Sun?
No question about the schedule, but a question about space. Is there still a limitation on people in this or no?
30.
Yeah, there is, but it's about 30 people.
So it's
Yeah,
not-
I don't foresee an issue for the committee for now.
Especially if we allow remote.
Yeah, I was just thinking
Right.
about like
Yeah.
the department heads and people joining from the town side and then eventually the school side.
Right. I would like to offer remote
Okay.
in the WebEx for them to present or be available.
I think that's being respectful of their time as well.
Would this be a better location than for our joint meetings with the school board if we have it here?
No, because I know there are conflicts with other departments having meetings
Oh, right. I'm sorry. You're correct. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
here on those. Yeah, on those.
All right. I'll send that email out and confirm that.
Just as a point of clarification, it was BCM Planning that did the impact fee methodology report and helped the town establish the impact fee schedule, not the Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, moving into our second round of public input.
I've spoken off.
There's no public input, nobody opening the door tonight to provide any comments. So I will close public input and we'll move into adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Douglas, a second by Mr. Sun. All those, well, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Sun,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Leary,
I
Douglas?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned 8:00. Next committee meeting is next Thursday, September 30th, with the focus on beginning town budget review. Thank you all. Have a good evening.